The Lions obviously are one. I think the Eagles have found their identity and who they are as a football team. They have run the ball twice as much as they've passed the ball. Saquon Barkley has become the focal point. On defense, they are shutting teams down there. I think as much as criticism that we give Sirianni, deservingly so with some of the decisions he makes, I think the way he runs this football team allows them to be who they are.
I think the way he runs this football team allows them to be who they are. Jason McCourty said that about Nick Sirianni and this Eagles football team as they get ready for the Dallas Cowboys. He says they have figured out who they are. They're a team that likes to, the one thing is, and I'm going to talk to Mosher about this, what's your identity? Oh, we're a running team. We're a passing team. No, the Eagles are a big play team, but what allows them to have the ability to convert those big plays. By the way, we're at Chickies and Pete's in Egg Harbor Township. I just noticed that there's people sitting outside. I mean, that's how nice it is. You got people outside. Love it, man. Love it. Beautiful. It's like 79 degrees outside. And you're going to have a football game this weekend. And they're in Dallas. The reason the Eagles have been able to be a big play team is because, in my mind, and we'll see what Geoff Mosher says about it when he joins us for Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Of course, here it's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And before we get to Mosher, I want to remind you this 4 o'clock hour of the show, it's brought to you by Jersey Cow in Northfield and in Brigantine. They're open every day from noon to 10. Ice cream is a year-round thing at Jersey Cow. It's 80 degrees outside again with the ice cream, baby. I love it. All right, one of the things that this team is becoming, you look at the numbers. They are the most explosive team in the league in terms of big plays, in getting these long, deep passes down the field. One of the reasons, in my opinion, of why they are able to be the big play team, why they can convert these big plays, is because it's not that they're committing to the run. They're not a run team. They're not this team that is a run-first team. But what they're doing is they're running the ball on early downs. And because they're running the ball on early downs, their down and distances are shorter. And their down and distances are makeable. It's one of the reasons why they go for it on 4th down, by the way, is because they're getting into a situation where it's 4th down and 2, 4th down and 1, 4th down and 3, and then they're saying, okay, we can convert here, and they want to keep taking shots with their big play offense. You know what happened in the game last week? You run on these early downs, the team starts to creep up to the line of scrimmage, and then what does it do? It opens up things behind you in the offense. It allows you to take a shot down the field and take that shot and find A.J. Brown. It allows you to find, last week, Devontae Smith. So as we bring Geoff Mosher in for Football at 4, we'll look at this week's game and see how these teams match up. But that's where, Jeff, we were talking about the Eagles' ability to be a big play offense, and I think that has kind of stemmed from the fact that, I don't want to say they're a run-first team, but the fact that they are willing to run the ball in the early downs, it's loosening some things up for them on the back end.
Sure is. I mean, a good run game, Mike, a good offensive line and running back and honest running game. It doesn't even have to be prolific. It just has to be good and honest and get positive yards. And when you start being able to run the ball both moderately and for explosive plays, the defense is on its toes. Linebackers get sucked in by play action, especially from under center. And it allows you just those extra moments to be able to hit receivers down the field, which is what you're seeing right now from the Philadelphia Eagles offense.
So we started with the big play this week against Dallas. Jeff, what's going on in their secondary? Diggs, Bland. This has not been a great Dallas defense. They give up 42 points a game almost at home this year. I mean, this should be another week where as long as Smith and Brown, and they both were on the practice field today, are available and healthy, man, this feels like a game where the deep ball should be a factor again.
Yeah, and some moron who worked for Inside the Birds a couple months ago in August said that Dallas getting Mike Zimmer as their defensive coordinator might be the coaching move of the NFL because he would bring stability to that defense where Dan Quinn was playing so much man and putting so much pressure, and they were giving up big plays. But don't worry, we're going to work on firing that moron if we can. Of course, then you wouldn't hear from me for the next I don't know how long. But, yeah, you would think, Mike. Now, listen, the Eagles, to your point, the Cowboys are getting healthier. Micah Parsons will be coming back. Looks like Diggs and Bland are getting healthier. We'll see if both of them can be out there at the same time. It's been those guys out has put stress on some of their other players who are decent to carry the load, like a Donovan Wilson, and at times the safety. At times the other guys just haven't been able to, and so it's looked very leaky. But if everything goes the way it's gone for most of the year for Dallas, then yes, you would think that there would be opportunity to generate explosive plays against them. But obviously it will start with blocking it up and making sure you have a plan for Micah Parsons, and we'll even have to see if Micah Parsons is 100% Micah Parsons.
Yeah, and, the other thing Dallas isn't very good at is stopping the run either. I mean, this is a week where you can kind of pick your poison here, and it feels like the kind of game where, I don't know, Jeff, we've been talking a lot about who this team is, and are they kind of growing into their roles and are growing into who they want to be. This is another game that you can't take Dallas for granted, but if you want to take Philadelphia serious, they have not played well in Dallas. So this could be a good sign to see if they take care of business on the road against a division team at Dallas, that they are growing into a team that you can start to trust more.
I would think so. I think that if it just becomes a telltale week in general for the Eagles where you have to go to Dallas and play in a stadium that has given you a lot of nightmares over the last few years, regardless of who's been starting at what position for them. And then 4 days later, you have to turn around and play the team that is currently, and maybe this will change after Sunday, but the team that's currently atop the NFC East. So I think it's just difficult to have to play two rivalry games in your division in a 5-day span. So that'll be a nice little test for the Eagles. Certainly, if the Eagles can win in Dallas, and if Washington loses to the Steelers and the Eagles leapfrog, you almost wonder if you just really, the Eagles can sense the chum in the water, so to speak, and really kind of put past the fact that it's a short turnaround and Washington's been good this year, and you've had your own horrors against Washington, even when Washington was bad for the last couple of years, and just kind of keep your eyes on the prize there.
Moshe, you said it. They have struggled against Washington, like Tyler Heineke or Sam Howell being the quarterback. Now they have a legitimate play caller, and obviously they're a much better football team. But the Eagles have always kind of found a way to slip up against them when they've had poor quarterback play. So that's why this game becomes very important. I want to get your thoughts on how Micah Parsons changes things. This Dallas team's been terrible, but if they're going to get Parsons back, how much can he affect the way this game is played on Sunday?
Well, the type of injury he was dealing with, you wonder if even with him being back and having some practice, can he be pedal to the metal? Is he full speed? If he is, or even if he's 80%, the Eagles have generally had a good plan for Micah Parsons. I mean, I'm sure he has his moments against the Eagles, but Parsons is the type of guy. I was talking to Greg Cosell about this on one of our shows. Parsons can give Fred Johnson some problems because Fred seems to deal all right with a bigger guy like a Trey Hendrickson, because Fred himself is a bigger guy. So the power guys like Trey Hendrickson, I think Fred can match with a little bit of body power of his own. The speed guys, I mean, you saw Josh Allen get bendy with him last week. I forget who it was in the first start that gave him a couple of issues. It might have been Brian Burns a couple weeks ago. But, Micah Parsons is both power and speed. He's the whole package. So I would imagine they're going to have to help Fred out a little bit so that you don't have a situation where you're letting an undermanned Dallas team let one guy kind of wreck your game plan.
Moshe, it looks like Dallas Goedert's going to come back and play. I want to get your opinion on what and how he changes things, if at all. I mean, they seem like they've got a little good thing going here with Stoll and Calcaterra. That doesn't mean you don't play Goddard. Obviously, when he's back, he goes back in. But does that change them at all? Does that add things to them? Does it change what they have been doing?
I mean, I think it does for Stoll, just as far as the playing time and snap percentage. But the Eagles they've alternated. This is one of the things about the Eagles offense that I think has been really nice to see over the last 4 or 5 weeks. They do it within games, and then they do it week to week where they can live in 11 personnel, they can live in 12 personnel. Last week, you talk about the first 15 plays. Last week, it looked like it was going to be kind of a big, heavy jumbo type game because they brought Van Sumeren out. They had running backs on the field. So you're talking about 21 personnel with one tight end and two running backs, and they played some 22 personnel with two running backs, two tight ends, one wide receiver. And you're like, okay, this must be the game plan. But then as the game settles itself out, the Eagles went far more 11 personnel, three receivers, one tight end, one running back in that game. So I don't think formationally or from a personnel grouping, they're going to change. I think they're going to continue to mix and match and try to find the defense that matches up to that and exploit it. But I do think Jack Stoll is likely the guy that's probably going to take a seat a little bit more. And I think you're still going to see Greg Calcaterra out there in some decent number of 12 personnel and probably get the ball a little bit to him. Not as much, obviously, as the last three games.
Yeah, Goddard, people forget, he's not only a really good pass receiver and a dynamic in the pass game, he's a very good blocker, too. So that doesn't take away some of the things they could do in the block game there. So Goddard should be back. A.J. Brown looks like he's trending to return. Smith was on the injury report yesterday. He was back at practice. It looks like the Eagles have their full complement of weapons in the pass game and in the run game. Saquon Barkley, obviously, as well. You look at Dallas, you got CeeDee Lamb, really. I mean, so is with Cooper Rush, I don't know how much that changes things or what it does, but, man, we laugh, but it's like, does this Dallas offense worry Vic Fangio at all?
Probably, I'm sure that there are some other offenses he's played this year.
All right, well, let's say this, Jeff. You and I are
a little bit more scared.
You and I are cosplaying the role of Vic Fangio and Nick Sirianni in a room with nobody else. Is Vic saying, watching that video, going, man, Nick, this offense stinks?
Yeah, I think if you're Vic Fangio, you're, A, looking at the fact that the Dallas offensive line has not been very good all year, even when they had Dak Prescott. B, you're looking at the backup quarterback in the game. And C, the lack of weapons. And I don't know, I'm thinking I'm probably not going to – I don't like to blitz anyway, but I really should not have to blitz. Maybe a few sim pressures just to keep Cooper Rush honest here. But 2 weeks ago, I was able to play a lot of two-high safety and man underneath called two-man. Last week against the Jags, they played a lot more man defense as well, but it was one man, one safety and man underneath. So I think Vic's going to be able to pick his poison on this one. And I wouldn't – if Darius Slay is back – I tend to think that maybe that was the difference between playing two-man and one-man. Who knows? But if Slay is back, I just think that Vic's going to allow his guys to play man, expect his front four to get home, and really be, I guess, judicious with how many times he wants to put two safeties back on the field because Dallas didn't even run the ball well. Jacksonville, you could say, at least since Doug Peterson took over, is starting to score more. They're getting Tank Bigsby more involved. So you can see why they're playing one high and keeping a safety in between there against the Jacksonville run game. But, yeah. I mean, right now, Nick's probably got a big menu, man. A big menu that he can choose from.
Well, and, the one thing with Dallas, like over the years, okay, the running back situation, you had Zeke, and then, it went over to Pollard, and now you've got Dowdle. Is that who's running the ball for them? But their offensive line has always been a big factor. Their line is a problem for them now, too. And that is why I'm interested to see this week if Philadelphia does, if they need to blitz. Because we keep wondering, do they have the pass rush? Do they have the pass rush? This is a team that you should be able to win up front with the four guys that you got. And you hope that you can keep learning off of that. And it gives them the ability to kind of do more things in coverage, which should really be a problem for the fact that they only have one weapon in the receiving game.
Well, let's call it like it is. I think that this is a litmus test game for the Eagles' pass rush because, again, I don't think Vic's going to feel any need to have to throw extra pressure, at least at the start of the game. And this Dallas offensive line has not been good. So now it's time to see if you can get a little bit more from Nolan Smith, who, when you played the bad offensive line, just start to look good. But against Jacksonville, Josh Sweat had 2 sacks. He showed you something. But, again, Walker Little, the guy was making his first start at left tackle. But you really didn't see a whole lot of pass rush. We talked about that on Monday. Milton Williams gave you some good pass rush snaps. Jalen Carter did. But consistently, down in, down out, that's not what you usually expect from Eagles defenses, right? But this year, this is what we've seen, a sporadic pass rush. And Vic can't get home with a 4-man rush against this Dallas offensive line, and he has to blitz, then I think we're going to go into that Washington game and then some of those games against the Ravens and Steelers, other teams that are a little more advanced, saying Eagles may have an issue here.
You're definitely right about that because, you just mentioned the Washington game, the Baltimore game. They got the Rams coming up here. They've also – yeah, that's why, for me, if you want to win this division, and you got to win division games, but you want to win the division, you cannot lose a game like this because Washington's just going to – we talked about this yesterday. I don't know if it was if you were on before or after the conversation, but I think it might have been you. I said, if you're going to win this division, you got to stack up these wins, and you almost have to beat Washington twice because of their schedule, man. They're going to win 11, 12, 13 games.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot will happen. Let's see what happens this week.
Unless there's an injury. Unless there's an injury that, the quarterback gets hurt or something to that effect.
Right, but I agree with you. There's a 4-week stretch there where we just talked about the Eagles' schedule is Baltimore, it's the Rams, then they get a cupcake against the Panthers, but then the week after that it is is it Washington again? I forget. It's a tougher team. Steelers, and then Washington again. And in that same 4 weeks, Washington has the Saints, they get the Cowboys, they get the Titans. So even if you have a 1-game lead coming out of that Thursday game, there's really not a big margin of error. So you need to be playing really good football. And part of that for the Eagles is defensively and getting a pass rush. So, yeah, I agree. I think that, it's every win right now matters really as much as they can possibly be, and you can't really slip up.
All right, the matchup that
By the way, we're not talking about playoffs, right? We're talking about the difference between being potentially the 2 seed if you win the NFC East, and then a 5 or a 6 or a seed, depending if you lose a couple of those games at the end of the year. So we're talking about having a home game versus going on the road. I mean, there's a lot at stake here.
No doubt. Listen, and I feel like this team is fighting. Not that they care, but the perception of who they are. And I don't know that they can gain any more perception, but you are playing the Cowboys on the road, and I think people do. I know Eagle fans are, the Cowboys suck this year, but I think if the Eagles go down there and win, that will win some people over who have, pontificated about the coach and his shortcomings in the game last week, virtually this entire week.
Yeah, that'll be up for the court of public opinion. So I didn't ask you, Mike, about that because you've asked me.
Yep.
But between the 2 4th downs, the 2 tush pushes after at the 1, and the field goal that he elected to kick late, are you 5 for 5 as far as bad decisions, or 3 for 5? Where did you stand on those decisions?
Well, I don't. I'm not a big fan of the analytics. So just if I was being an irrational, I'm going to blast the coach because I just think he's an idiot, then, yeah, I don't like most of the stuff that he did. Now, I do understand that the analytics are involved here, which I don't particularly like. People have been battling with me, and I'm not saying that I'm backing Sirianni here. I'm just trying to give people some more information of, why teams do this. I don't like it. The one that I don't like is where you can go up 3 scores. You can go up 3 scores in a game at any point. It's hey, you're going to make a team have to score 3 times against us. So you're saying we're going to go for it because I trust the players. Okay, fine. But don't you trust your defense to not give up 3 scores? And that if you go up 3 scores, that you're saying, I trust that my defense ain't giving up 3 scores in this game. That's a problem I have with.
Is that the first 4th down? I forget which one would have put them up.
Yeah, it was 22-0. They had a shot to go up. It was, I guess, 4th and 3 at the 22 or something like that, and they had a 40-yard field goal that would have been 25-0, I guess.
Right. Okay, yeah, that was the 4th and 3. I forgot. I thought it was 10-0, but you're right. I think it was later in the game. So yeah,
that one. Yeah. I mean, the 4th and inches. I always say this, Jeff. My mindset is this: if you can't get an inch, you're not a Super Bowl level team. You know what I mean? You have to have the mindset. If we're good enough to win a Super Bowl, we have to be able to get an inch. And I think they believe they're good enough to get it. That doesn't mean you're going to get the inch every single time, but you better have the mindset that I can get that freaking inch.
That was the one I had most issue with. I didn't have an issue with the first 4th down, but although I understand your viewpoint. But that one, it was 22-16. So you're only up by 6. against a team that has not moved the ball at all, but somehow figured out a way to get a turnover and hang in there, and they had the momentum. So why not kick the field goal and go up 2 possessions there, especially because you're in this late in the third quarter at that point. Time's running out. This team hasn't really moved the ball. They got gifted a touchdown. So that one I thought was a very, very bad decision. And like I told you the other day, I'm sure there are some analytics that would support kicking the field goal there and going up 2 late in the game when a team that you're playing can't score and you're without your best wide receiver.
Yeah, and that's where I don't know where the analytics says on that, like the level of opponent. Where do they kind of draw the line of, well, this team's not, you know what I mean? Like, that's where the analytics give me a problem. But you're right in terms of, your mindset is right. Like, go up the 2 scores, go up by 9, and basically make them, it's the same thing I was saying before. I'm trusting my defense isn't going to give up 2 scores. But on the flip side, my point I guess I'm making is I can be convinced and come to terms with it's not a horrendous decision that he says, I'm the head coach of this team, and I think we can get an inch.
Right.
Yep. You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah,
the math portion of it says he made a mistake. But this is where I feel like the fans and people, the disconnect, like what I value in a good coach is the culture that they set. Do the players believe in him? Does he trust the play? Like, those things to me mean a lot more than my buddy, we used to play John Madden football in college, and he never played video games. He used to bust our stones all the time, but he says, we'd put the game on, and everybody, he's got 99 speed, and this guy's got 35, and he'd say, I don't see a level on there for heart, and it's like the intangibles of what the coach does that I think gets lost in the sauce. And him having that, we played audio, Derek Gunn had Lane Johnson. I don't know if you heard any of that conversation, but I thought that was very, very revealing. That Lane said, look, there's times when, we think we should kick a field goal, but we understand the data says, and the data says that because we have been successful. Otherwise, the data wouldn't say what it says, but because the data says we've been successful doing it, that's why we do it.
Yes, I believe I heard that because it was on Gun On One, which is on the Inside the Birds platform.
There you go.
So I'm fairly certain I had it because I edited and posted every week. I was actually going to just bring that whole point up to you, and you just segued into it beautifully.
Well, so, we played that Lane Johnson audio in our first segment today, and because it's surprising sometimes, former players being this critical of Sirianni. Do they do it for sensationalism, or are they not understanding that the analytics are tied to why he does it?
Right. I think that's a good discussion. And one of the interesting things Lane also said in that entire interview, which is up on the Inside the Birds platform, is as a veteran, Lane finds himself in the unique position playing this league so long that he's not that much younger than his offensive coordinator or his head coach. So he doesn't feel like when he talks to them, it's like when he was in high school and you have to run through the wall. Yeah, he wants to play for his coach, but I'm saying he feels like it's like 2 adults having a conversation more so than a player who has to be subservient to every single thing the head coach or the coordinator says.
It would be like as if you and I had a couple ideas on a new show and we said, hey, let's go down to the bar, we'll grab a beer, and we'll put some ideas together, right? Exactly. Nobody is above the other one. We're just throwing ideas around. Now, in this situation, the coach is above the player, but they're almost on the same level. And he's saying, Coach, I got some ideas. You want to listen to them? And, I thought that Lane was very refreshing for people who just don't like Sirianni, because I've been asking this whole week, what's the disconnect? Why don't we like this guy? And to me, we played the Jason Kelce audio from his podcast that said, look, he is the best situational football coach I've ever been around. That's a pretty strong comment coming from a Jason Kelce. And I think that Lane Johnson is on the same platform level of when he says something, he doesn't say it to, just blow smoke up your, what. Lane Johnson really means what he says. I think he's one of those guys that doesn't care if he says something that's going to rub you the wrong way. And he's saying, what I like about Nick is he goes for it on 4th down, and we might not all agree, but after the game is over, he tells us why he went for it there, and that, you know what I mean? I think the fans should I think the fans should feel pretty secure that these players legitimately respect and like playing for the coach.
I would agree with you. And I think that helps. Now, does that, and I'm sure you've made this point, it doesn't mean the coach is great. It just means at least you have a locker room where there's an understanding between the coaching staff and the players. And to be honest with you, last year there was not that. And I'm not just talking about Nick Sirianni, obviously. There were coordinator issues, there were position coach issues, there was communication, back and forth issues. But throughout the whole time, there has always been a good respect factor for Nick and the way he handles himself within that locker room and talks to his players. So I do think that is a good thing, and it avoids situations where you think a team is turning its back on the head coach. Now, when the Eagles lost 6-7, I don't think we had conversations last year about, have the Eagles tuned him out? Do they not believe in him? Are they trying to make a statement, kind of like we had during the end of the Chip Kelly era? We didn't have that. Those are different. Those are different concerns when you talk about, is a coach good enough to win the Super Bowl or be here for the long term.
Real quick before we let you run, do you feel that like Detroit is very much like Philly? They're very analytic. They're aggressive. They'll go for it on fourth down. It got them to the NFC Championship. Like, people watch Detroit and say, "Man, that team's really good." Well, they're really good because they are aggressive. They'll go for it on fourth down, and they convert. And because they convert, they blow teams out. You know what I mean? Like, so because of their aggressive nature, the fact that they convert on their aggression, they end up winning games by lopsided scores. Eagles, on the other hand, last week, they went for it on fourth down. They did not convert. But if they did convert, they probably win that game 40 to, who knows, 40 to 10.
100%.
Yep. Exactly. So my question for you is, was Detroit better than San Francisco, or were they in that game because, they were an aggressive football team and they played over their head?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, those were two really, really good football teams that playing each other. And you make a fair point, because I believe in that game, Campbell got a little bit of conservative on fourth down, atypical how he had been all year, and they lose that game, and some of his coaching decisions came under question. So it's a fair question. We can't sit here and say if he did it differently, they definitely would have converted and definitely would have won, but it did stick out that some of the things he did were out of character for how he had coached the entire season. And to be honest with you, remember the Super Bowl the Eagles were in against Kansas City? Nick did the same thing. He was very aggressive that year, but there were some situations where he punted, including, I think, the one that Kadarius Toney returned to set up the go-ahead touchdown there, in which he had ordinarily gone for it during the regular season, and he also got crushed for going out of character. When you put these guys on the biggest stage, and that's why I think Doug Peterson always deserves the fullest amount of credit for winning that Super Bowl, because he never relented from his aggression. He brought it out, right? He brought the feeling special. He just didn't care. He was going to do the unconventional. He was going to be aggressive as aggressive can be, and that won the Eagles the Super Bowl.
All right, there he is, Geoff Mosher, Football 4. Check out that Gun On One conversation on the Inside the Birds platform. It was really good with Lane Johnson and, of course, Geoff filling in for Andrew DeCecco today from the Inside the Birds podcast. This was Football at 4. Thank you, Geoff.
Thank you, Mike.